Welcome to today's Black Fleet Network webinar on clean energy. My name is Sharon Dudley Parham, and I'm here with Rosalind Ward Nelson, representing the BFN Clean Energy Task Force team. We are thrilled to have you join us as we explore this important topic together. But before we get started, I want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be made available online after the session, so you can revisit it at any time or share this discussion with others who might also find it valuable. Now, before we begin, let's go over a few guidelines to ensure that today's webinar runs smoothly and remains an engaging and productive experience for everyone. First, we kindly ask all attendees to remain muted during the discussion. This helps minimize background noise and ensures that everyone can focus on the content being presented. Second, while we welcome your enthusiasm and questions, we ask that you hold all questions until the end of the session. There will be a designated Q&A period where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions live or submit them via the chat feature. Please locate that feature on your screen. There, you will also find a link to ask questions or provide comments after the meeting. Third, please use the chat function respectfully. Feel free to share thoughts or comments related to the topic, but please refrain from sharing unrelated links or engaging in off-topic discussions. Finally, we are committed to creating a respectful and inclusive environment. Please ensure that your contributions, both spoken and written, reflect this commitment. Any inappropriate language or behavior will result in immediate removal from the webinar. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sharon Dudley Parham, and I am so excited to be your moderator for today's event. We're focused on the Black Fleet Network Clean Energy Blueprint webinar, and this webinar specifically is with regard to EV infrastructure, groundbreaking essentials, where we will explore practical strategies and real solutions for traversing one of the greatest challenges that we're facing in the road to EV adoption. So again, good morning. This topic is a very relevant and passionate topic for those of us who are focused in this space of particularly automotive transportation and mobility, but also the surrounding infrastructure, which obviously includes the ecosystem and infrastructure, which obviously includes EV. For decades, this conversation around energy challenges has truly been an evolutionary space. In the mid-1990s, some of you may already know, but for those of you who don't, this conversation, particularly within the United States, has been focused on reducing the country's reliance on foreign oil. At that time, the country was considering such things as alternative fuels and advanced technologies, particularly when it came to support for people's housing and transportation, vehicles that people owned. And those alternative fuels included such things as compressed natural gas, CNG, liquid propane gas, LPG, E85, solar, and of course, EV. There was also some consideration at that time for hydrogen fuel cells, etc. That conversation progressed, and the dialogue really became focused more intimately on the types of things that would be the types of energy sources that would be good for the country. And that consideration involved such things as renewable fuels, sustainable fuels, and clearly clean energy. Ultimately, clean fuels was one of the strongest of the considerations. Today, we are at that intersection with additional knowledge about how these vehicles could be utilized in different spaces, meaning for your average individual, so a retail perspective, if you will, a commercial use, commercial business case. So when you think about a facility and its energy uses and or vehicles and their energy uses in the commercial space, consider something like, I'll just use Amazon for instance, where a vehicle might be an EV vehicle, start out at the driver's home or a facility owned by Amazon, and then move into delivering, to X customer, Y customer, Z customer, and then back home. So a cycle. And there's a lot of consideration around those sort of challenges and those sort of that progress that could be made utilizing the commercial focus as the source. As we begin to have that conversation really hits an intersection that is a discussion of great opportunity. There are opportunities clearly for many different energy sources, in addition to the opportunity to be consistently focused on the traditional fuels, internal combustion engine vehicles using gasoline and other such, or diesel, et cetera. And those discussions we will raise going forward. So I'm going to place a little bit of teaser here and say that you will have the opportunity to participate in more of these sort of discussions. But again, this discussion is specific to EV infrastructure, groundbreaking essentials, and the focus there within. So with that background, what I would like to do is introduce to you our subject matter experts for this discussion. And I have to admit, I'm incredibly passionate about these individuals, in part because I have been following them for years. And, having had some background, particularly in the automotive and in the alternative fuel and advanced technology space, I am really very I don't know what other word to use, but excited about presenting these individuals to you. So I'm going to begin with our first subject matter expert, who is Al Curtis. Al Curtis, Fleet Services Director for Cobb County, Georgia, and Public Fleet Hall of Fame inductee, has over 30 years of experience in fleet service industry and has both private and public sector background. Al manages more than 2,700 assets for Cobb County's diverse fleet of vehicles, making significant sustainability improvements. Under his leadership, the Cobb County team has added more than 67 EVs, 60 charging stations, implemented an employee charging program, added 180 hybrid police vehicles, 24 biofuel trucks, and deployed the first electric prisoner transport van in the county. These smart vehicle choices and many strategic partnerships has saved the county more than $750,000 and has aided in sustainability efforts to reduce the negative impact of greenhouse gas emissions in Cobb County. Welcome, Al Curtis. Our next subject matter expert is Dexter Turner. Dexter Turner is the founder and CEO of OpConnect Incorporated, which is an electric vehicle charging solutions company based in Portland, Oregon. Dexter holds an MS in aerospace engineering, as well as an MBA. As a serial entrepreneur, Dexter has founded 2 companies in the aviation industry, including one with a successful exit that achieved a 68 times ROI. He also leads a contract software development company that has been in business since 2002. As the inventor on 9 patents, Dexter brings over 25 years of engineering and leadership experience. He's also the founder of Dream Corp's Green for All Business Council, which is committed to advancing clean technologies in low-income communities and communities of color. Welcome, Dexter Turner. Additionally, we have Gavin Ireland. Gavin Ireland is the CEO of Georgia Clean Energy Services, a leading firm specializing in EV infrastructure and clean energy solutions. With a passion for sustainability and over a decade of experience in renewable energy, Gavin has spearheaded innovative projects that bridge the gap between emerging technologies and community needs. Under his leadership, Georgia Green Energy Services has become a trusted partner for commercial and residential clients, offering expertise in EV charging solutions and installation, energy efficiency, and green infrastructure. Gavin is committed to advancing the clean energy movement through strategic partnerships and forward-thinking solutions. Welcome, Gavin. With that, what I would like to do is move directly into some of the questions that we have planned for our subject matter experts. I'm going to start, if you will, with Dexter Turner. Dexter, given the background that we led in with this conversation, the first question that I would like to ask you has to do with EV infrastructure that was laid prior to this point in time. So you talked a little bit about EV infrastructure laid during the 1990s. Um, how do you feel that that infrastructure has supported the evolving thinking within today's EV charging infrastructure? Do you think it has supported it? If so, please tell us a little bit about why, and if not, why not?
Hi, thanks, Sharon, and glad to be here today. I just want to correct one thing before I start. I'm one of the founding CEOs of the Business Council. There's actually seven Black and Brown CEOs that were originally founding members of that council, so I don't want to take all the credit. Um, Unfortunately, that infrastructure that was laid in the 90s and the 2000s did not support what we're doing today. The charging plug standards changed over time, and the infrastructure also wasn't forward thinking. It wasn't built to be upgraded or easily swapped out over time. And we're even seeing that with charging stations that were installed in the 2010s, for example. And we think that's one thing that's really important, and we counsel our customers on is be forward thinking when you install the infrastructure. Think about the future. I'm sure Al and some other people on the team that are fleet operators, can agree with this statement that the vehicles keep evolving. The batteries get bigger. The charging speeds get bigger over time. And something that was put in the ground just 5 years ago, if it's not, if it doesn't have components that can be easily swapped out or something not easily upgradable, you can find that it's already outdated after just 5 years.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting. Gavin, I'm going to ask you a similar question, or at least a tag on to that. From your experience working with commercial customers, what are the critical elements that you think are necessary in order to ensure their transition to cleaner energy?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you, Sharon. And from my experience, I think what we're finding is the lack of information that's out there. Yeah, I think some of the fears that we see from the commercial clients and commercial customers are unfounded. They're things that have been put out there, and let's say as a rumor, or just things that are not based in fact. And I think that's the biggest apprehension that we see coming from our commercial customers is once they're educated on the advantages and the benefits of making the transition to cleaner, greener energy by way of electric vehicles. Most of them are all going to be all on board. And I can't think of one client that has made that transition who has chosen to go back. The vehicles are better in the majority of cases. The habits may need to be adjusted somewhat, but that's something that is typically, very, very easy to do with some pre-planning. So I think from that standpoint, it's just really just having more events like this and webinars where people can hear and learn from real-time experienced individuals and subject matter experts who are in this field as to what those benefits and pros and cons of making that transition are. And once they go that route, most of the clients that we've worked with have been very happy with it, and just wish that they had done it sooner.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Al, with your experience, can you share with us, as we're talking with Gavin a little bit about the fears and the education, can you share with us some of the learning that Cobb County's transition into the EV space has brought forward, and how these learnings can be applied to other municipalities looking to electrify their fleets?
Well, thanks, Sharon. I'm glad to be here and share some institutional knowledge and some knowledge gained from almost a decade of electrification experience. Again, When we first deployed electrification, it was a data-driven type decision. We used data to look at where these vehicles would fit into the mix in the departments based on duty cycle. And again, it was all about education like Gavin was talking about. We worked with different manufacturers, which Nissan, when we first started back in 2015, which electrification and electric vehicles were really scary at that time. Most people didn't know how to charge and the expectation of the vehicle itself. So we had to do a lot of ride and drives. We did a lot of educational sessions, lunch and learns, and actually to just really get people in the seat of the vehicle. I mean, when we actually got people involved in ride and drives and taking the vehicle to their specific departments and allowing them to utilize it. And again, the chicken and egg factor comes into play as well. We utilized a leasing program with Nissan initially to deploy these vehicles, but in the same instance, we utilized grant funds and deployed charging stations. So it's not the chicken and egg. We did both at the same time to make sure that we had adequate infrastructure in place when we deployed these particular vehicles. And we put butts in seats. That's an old analogy that I received from a person that's been in the industry 40 years in electrification from Nissan. And we allowed them to take the vehicle. We did walk-arounds. We gave them the manuals and everything for the vehicle, so really get them really comfortable with it. And let me tell you one quick thing that we did to work with our technicians to get them familiar, get them ease of use and understanding the vehicles. We took our largest guy in the shop, the one that has the biggest voice, 320 pounds, 6'4", in a Nissan Leaf. When we were hearing people saying, well, this vehicle's too small, he got in the vehicle. He's the loudest guy, and everybody listens to him. I'm talking customers and technicians. He took the vehicle out, got in. He had over 8 inches of headspace in the vehicle. And when he took it for a drive and came back, that's all it took. The technician saw, he came back talking about how well the vehicle performed, how he has room and space and so on. And him being the service writer, everybody comes in and checks the vehicles in from him. So he was our voice to let people know that these vehicles were fit for duty.
That's fantastic. So, as you're saying that, I'm thinking through what in the automotive industry we commonly refer to as ecosystem thinking, which I think is exactly what you're talking to, is this understanding of putting the entire ecosystem in place so that the paradigm works. Is that how you feel that infrastructure has contributed to your ability to be successful? Is that way of thinking?
Well, the infrastructure piece, there's so many diverse options in infrastructure right now. We started off with, charge point units. And then we went to behind the fence Clipper Creek units, which were very, very affordable for municipalities. But there's so many different diverse charging options that are out there. We've explored many of those. We're working with a company called Pando, which has a $499 charging station, which is basically a 240 outlet with a cover for those municipalities that are really concerned about $10,000 charging stations. This is all behind the fence. We work with a company called Watricity that has inductive charging. We also have one of the beams, which is a solar infrastructure for charging. So for those municipalities that are kind of on the fence or off the fence about infrastructure, there's so many different diverse options that are out there. You just need to basically chime in on some of these webinars, go to different conferences, talk to your peers, contact me, or talk to Gavin, talk to Dexter about their charging solutions, because the infrastructure piece is not a big or heavy lift as some people put it out to be. There's so many different options out there for everybody.
Interesting. Okay, sort of along those lines, particularly with regard to the technology behind infrastructure and the software, Dexter, given UpConnect's proprietary software, How do you ensure that energy usage optimization aligns with grid reliability and your users' accessibility?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. I love what Al was mentioning about all the different kinds of the wide variety of charging infrastructure that's out there. So while our platform is proprietary and that we have, proprietary algorithms that I'm very proud of my engineering team that's developed in-house, we're hardware agnostic. So as long as, a charging station is open charge point protocol, we can bring it onto our platform and manage it, and it lets us support our customers to go out and experiment with different things. And one of the things that we find with a lot of our customers is it's really easy to do a pilot and incorporate, one or two or five vehicles. You can usually find the power available on site without the utility having to come in and bring additional service, or maybe even without having to install a transformer. But then as soon as you talk about getting to scale, you want to incorporate 20 vehicles, 60 vehicles, or even, we have a customer that has over 100 vehicles on one site, one of our school bus operators. You quickly run into a situation where just an unmanaged charging solution, plug the vehicle in and it charges, that's not going to work for you. You need to manage the flow of that energy. And that's where that we think the software really comes in, being able to balance the load, having smart charging software that can make sure that you don't blow that transformer, that you protect the infrastructure on site, and you protect the grid infrastructure while still making sure all the vehicles get charged overnight. And with some of our sophisticated customers too, that for example, emergency response, they may need to be able to prioritize the charging of certain vehicles, so that if this emergency response vehicle comes in, it automatically pops to the top of the list, and it's going to be charged full power first because it may need to be dispatched and go out again immediately. So that's really the kind of smart charging infrastructure that we find fleet operators need.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. So it accesses and analyzes a priority use. That's interesting. Really interesting. Okay. Gavin, what advancements in the energy efficiency technologies do you see as game changers for commercial customers in this space?
So what I'm seeing across the industry, and not just in our industry, but across all industries, is as the evolution of artificial intelligence becomes more and more a thing that we're learning how to capitalize on and how to work with it. We're seeing that the advancements in developing technology to solve some of our pain points is happening at a much faster rate. When we think about electric vehicles, some of the concerns that we hear are the charge times, the distance, the range anxiety is a big one. Those are some of the catchphrases that we hear out there. When that happens, there becomes a need for someone to solve those issues. And with the technology that we have now, we're seeing that the solutions are coming fast. They're coming out every week, every month. There's a new company, a new technology, some new innovation in this space. And I like to equate it to a few years ago when you could purchase a flat screen TV and it was 200 pounds and you put it on your wall and it took 4 big guys to do it. Now you can go to the store and get one and it's just a couple $100 and it's just a couple pounds, right? So it's the same thing that we're seeing with EVs, but it's happening at a much faster rate because of AI. So we work with a few firms that their sole responsibility is to find ways to allow vehicles to charge faster and drive longer, much further distances. And once we get to a comfortable space where people feel comfortable to, hey, if I have to drive, across the country or from one state to another, I can comfortably stop somewhere, charge my vehicle, and it's not going to be a hindrance because I have to park for 4 hours in the middle of my trek. So we're seeing that the technologies that are coming through, the artificial intelligence and the different technologies are helping to advance these technologies and these innovations at a much faster rate. And the projections that we have is that in 3 or 4 years, we'll look back at today's charge rates and ranges that these vehicles go and be dumbfounded at, wow, that, look how far we've come, because that's where we're going. Yeah, technology is moving at such a fast pace that all of these concerns that we have will be solved in a very short period of time.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. As you're talking about that, what comes to mind is that in a fleet manager space, there's sort of a multifaceted story there. You definitely have to solve the issues associated with the driver and the business use, right? As a fleet manager, you also have the role of ensuring that your planning for what you would like to see have happen with your fleet is addressed up front. Al, share with us, especially given the background that Gavin has given us on technology change and AI, how do you approach financial planning and analysis required to justify your transition into clean energy for public fleets with your management? How do you approach that discussion?
Well, I just tell them we're going to do it. Now, if it was that easy, anybody could do it, right? So, yeah. So how do I approach that? Being early adopters, that was really hard to a degree because most of upper management were keen in on petroleum-based vehicles, and that's all they knew. So I had to rip the blinders off and use the data. So what we did was we took, I say, a batch of Crown Vics that we were putting all this money into because we repurposed our law enforcement vehicles. So once when they reached a certain threshold as far as mileage, we rolled them down to different departments that needed just regular, passenger vehicles. So we started looking at the data on how much money based on total cost of ownership. And that's what operations are all about. What is this vehicle costing you over the long haul? Eventually, of course, at the onset, when police had it, of course, it cost a lot because they were burning fuel, they were brakes, they were all these other type of things. But when we rolled it down, those costs still were there. So we utilized that cost analysis to say, okay, if we bought them a new vehicle, instead of actually continue to repair this one, and if we purchased EVs, which have a total of 20 moving parts versus a Crown Vic or any other vehicle has 2,000 moving parts. So you look at the analogy, said, okay, am I want to replace, what is it going to cost me to replace 20 moving parts if they wear out, which most don't, or 2,000? So we took that analysis to say it costs us XYZ to continue to keep these vehicles on the road when it costs us XYZ to put new electrification vehicles on the road. So we use that data to make those good financial decisions and put that in front of management and said, hey, this electric vehicle is costing us when we're leasing them $200 a month on a lease. And we could buy it out after 3 years or 2 years or whatever. And the charging was free at that time. We didn't have fuel cost. So we leveraged all of those options to say this vehicle would be the better suit. And that's how we approach management in that transition in that respect. And for the infrastructure, we had turnkey options. Well, back then we didn't. All it was DIY, do it yourself. And we did it ourselves because all the different options that are out here now for infrastructure weren't available back in 2015, 16, 17. Now there's so many different options with turnkey solutions, with make-ready programs, with all the other different things that are out there now. But our approach to financial planning was to say, over a period of time, we want to replace every gas vehicle that is not in public safety, that fits the duty cycle, that has a duty cycle of 50 to 70 miles in a day's range. We want to replace those with electrification. And that was the justification we used instead of buying a gas vehicle, total cost of ownership versus buying or leasing an electric vehicle with the total cost of ownership.
Yes, that's so interesting. And, so many people have been talking about range and the battery discussion, right? And they're looking forward to range being 300, et cetera. And, the truth of the matter is, in many business case uses, it doesn't have to be that. It's a cycle, right? Just as we talked, like Amazon, it's a cycle. And so that 50 to 70 and maybe a little bit higher, but not hugely, right, is just fine, and it comes back to a facility and gets charged in the evening. I want to switch topics just slightly and come to Dexter. Dexter, we talked a little bit about strategic advancement, strategic expansion of this space. What strategic considerations are guiding OpConnect's expansion into Canada and Puerto Rico, particularly when it comes to energy infrastructure?
Uh, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's got a number of components that we were thinking about. We've been expanding throughout the United States. As you mentioned, that we're based in Portland, Oregon. So we've initially started installing vehicles around the state of, or installing chargers around the state of Oregon. We've now expanded into over 30 states. And we started looking to expand outside the United States for reason number one, to diversify the business. You see what's happening politically in the United States. A business that has operations in other countries doesn't have all their eggs in one basket. That was one consideration for us, just to diversify outside the continental United States. Another consideration was, we want to be a big company eventually, and big companies operate internationally. And then another consideration was also, we felt that we could learn something from operating in different countries. They have different power systems. They have different utility environments, as far as, the way people pay for electricity, or the way the EV charging may be regulated. And we thought that there was an opportunity for us to learn, operating in some of those other environments, and then, pull some of that features and functionality into our software platform that would maybe also help us with our US operations. So there was just a number of different considerations that went into that decision.
Thank you for that. As you're talking, sort of a learning system internal to a company is really, really critical to give some input and some feedback into some things that help you advance, right? That's really an interesting thing that we'll probably touch more on at a later point. But Gavin, I would like to touch a little bit about sort of this learning, and let's talk a little bit about partnership development. Can you please discuss how strategic partnerships have helped Georgia Green Energy Services advance in your space in infrastructure?
Yes, absolutely. Partnerships are the key for our growth plans, strategically and organically. Collaboration has been instrumental in taking us to where we are today. Based off of our partnerships and the companies and the firms and the agencies that we've collaborated with, we've been able to share information, share experience, and share knowledge that has seen the benefits across the board for all of the firms that we've worked with. We work with utility companies, and we work with government agencies on a federal, state, and local level. So we've been able to integrate our expertise into all levels, as well as the private space as well, and been able to see the way that different firms work, the way that they approach electrification, their thoughts and their concerns about it. And we've been able to see, the innovation and the technology that they use in their operations, and been able to implement some of those across the board in our own operations. So, so the sharing of knowledge and information and experience, has been crucial for us, as we continue to grow and scale our operation. I think it's very important for smaller companies to be able to do that, to work with larger firms and other smaller firms, to be able to share some of that that knowledge of the industry that they're working in, and to everyone's benefit. We've worked with companies across the states and across countries. Puerto Rico's one. We've worked in Puerto Rico. We've worked in Canada, and we've also worked, as far north as Maine on government projects for infrastructure. So we've learned quite a bit, and the strategic growth that we see and the trajectory, particularly when it comes to forecasting what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. Where is this money going to trickle down to? Where does industry see things happening? We've been able to be at the forefront of many of those, and it's allowed us to make decisions to position ourselves in the path and frequency to continue to garner the success that we've been able to achieve thus far.
That's a wonderful response. Thank you so much for that. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about, the forecast and where we're going. Al, given such aggressive goals that Cobb County has had, how do you continuously measure your continuously measure your incremental progress, particularly in light of those aggressive goals?
How do we measure? Here's a little option here. Effective management starts with accurate measurement, to your point. We established early on key performance indicators to kind of measure and monitor what we want to see and how we want to evolve. With KPIs, it allows us to be able to manage that and measure where we are and where we really want to go. One of our goals for our carbon reduction was to add, of course, more EVs within the fleet, which would be taking out more gas and petroleum-based vehicles. We're currently at 14% of all of our vehicles within our fleet are alternatively fueled. Our goal was to make it 25%. That's our goal to finish out this particular year. That's really aggressive. I'm hoping we can make that happen. With that said, with all the different vehicle manufacturers that are out here now that are producing electric vehicles, I feel it's an attainable goal. But we'll continue to look at those measurements and continue to push that envelope. We currently have right now 4 police interceptor Blazers on order, sure to hit the ground before the end of February. Those are going to be going in police operation. That is a vehicle specific designed for law enforcement operation. We had that on a pilot test program with certain ones of our precinct and our sheriff's department. If that pans out to work well with the upfit, duty cycle with about 270 to 280 range for our officers, then we'll be looking forward to moving forward with more of those vehicles within the fleet. Currently, our deployment of carbon reduction vehicles in the police department, there's over 180 hybrid police interceptors on the road. And our sheriff's department has roughly about 6 fully electric vehicles from Mach-E's to Nissan Leafs. So again, those are the departments that travel the most miles within our fleet. So if we can integrate more of those electric vehicles within those particular areas, that's going to continue to help us meet those carbon reduction goals. And of course, we have solar here as well to offset grid charges. As we all know, buildings produce CO2 emissions as well. And to help reduce that from the electricity that's actually generated to power these buildings and infrastructure, if we offset that with solar power, which we have 3 different solar arrays within our county, one powering our heavy duty shop, and one also powering our critical infrastructure, our fuel island. So that's true. Those strategic moves that we're working on right now will continue to help us aid in our incremental reduction of CO2 emissions within the county. As an overall goal for the country itself, I think there's a lot more traction being done with carbon capture. I've done a lot of research on carbon capture. There's a lot of companies that are doing carbon capture and injecting it into the ground, and also all the different industry that are putting EGR type configurations on those stacks to reduce the CO2 emission that they're actually producing. And One thing a lot of people don't realize, and they probably don't pay attention to, is our maritime industry produces more CO2 emission than anything in the world. A lot of people think vehicles on the road produce. The maritime industry does not have any particular type of regulation yet on what CO2 emissions that they're producing over our waterways. So that's just a little nugget there.
Thank you so much for that. And I think a lot of people don't understand that managing fleet services is so all-encompassing, right? You hear Al talking about carbon capture, but you also heard about upfit. What upfit is, for those who might not know, is a vehicle modification that allows the vehicle to better perform the use case that it's intended for. So, as Al was talking about police vehicles go through some significant changes to make sure that they're well equipped to do the job that they are supposed to do, particularly with safety, et cetera. And so all of those things come into play. There's a huge equation that helps people in the fleet services space understand and manage their operational efficiency. So along those lines, I'd like to come back to Mr. Turner. From your experience working with municipal and commercial fleets, what are the critical elements that you think are necessary to ensure the transition of electrification while maintaining operational efficiency?
Well, that's a great question. I think the most important thing is to have a plan, to have a vehicle electrification plan, like some of the things that Al talked about. And there's one customer that pops to mind. It's a city that has over 2,000 vehicles. And by the time they came to us to start talking about the EV charging infrastructure, they had already worked with a consultant and come up with a 10-year vehicle electrification plan that was impressive. They identified, we're going to, by quarter, these are the vehicles that we're going to transition from gas and diesel to electric. And it was everything from, they even had planned out, 3 years in advance, they had a fire truck. They had been talking with Oshkosh about fire engines that were coming out. They were looking at transition of fire engine. They, were looking at transitioning some of their, park and services vehicles. And what I really liked about it was the plan was designed to give them some early experience with some of the vehicles that maybe weren't critical, for some of the city's operations. But then as they got a year or two of experience under their belt, then they were going to start to fold in more critical vehicles like the police department, the water department, that fire engine, these critical vehicles, these emergency response vehicles. And then they also had thought about how this could affect their operations. Like, for example, they had this fleet management software that they were working with. And one of their requirements for us is, okay, we track all of our fueling expenses by department inside of this one piece of software. And we don't want all of the city departments to have to learn a new piece of software. We're going to get a lot of pushback if we do that. So they wanted us to be able to integrate the electric fuel data into their existing fleet management piece of software, so that it would be a smooth transition for their customers. They wouldn't have to learn a new piece of software. And I thought that was really smart on their part. And then the additional thing that we brought to the table, I think, was to make them think about future-proofing that charging infrastructure. When we're installing the charging station, then stations that we're installing today would maybe only need a 3-inch piece of conduit to carry the electric wire. But let's go ahead and upsize that conduit to 6 inches today, because it's really cheap just to pull new wire in the future to upgrade to a faster charger. But if you have to tear up the concrete and put in new conduit, the cost to upgrade to a new charging station could be 10 times what it was if you just spent a little bit extra up front and future-proof that installation. So I think the biggest thing is to have a plan, think about the future.
That's great input. The whole concept of ensuring that you've got a plan that you can adhere to or modify. We talked not only about the plan, but learning, partnerships, operational efficiencies. Gavin, Along those lines, you've done a lot of work with IBEW. Given your professional experience there and your background with IBEW, what do you think are the critical skills to support the plan, the learning, the partnerships, the operational efficiencies? What do you think the critical skills that are required for success in these clean energy projects, and specifically the planning and implementation of a practical infrastructure solution?
So there's a number of different facets that we have to consider when thinking about future-proofing our labor force to be able to work in the EV space, particularly electric vehicle infrastructure. But then also we have to think about the technology that is involved with the charging stations. We've moved from a time and a day where skilled labor was very narrow. If you went to school to be an electrician, you would really stay in that lane and it wouldn't veer off too much into data and analytics and technology and computers and programs and things of that nature. So the IBEW, they also have to get on board with that transition as well, for them to continue to remain relevant. What we're finding now is, across the board, the need for highly skilled labor is tremendous. We're not seeing as many younger people getting into the skilled trades as they once were. So the demand is very high, but the supply is very low. What we find now is that in the EV space, that the technology and engineering, they come hand in hand with the construction element of the electric vehicle transition. So there's an opportunity here for younger people to get into electric vehicles and renewables in a way that they would not have been able to previously. And when I say that, I mean by way of project management, procurement, engineering, scheduling, just innovation, programming. Those are things that the IBEW doesn't teach. So, so for people who are interested in getting into this space, there's more than one path to get into it. The IBEW is still a very viable path for people who are interested in the construction element of it, and it will remain there because of the need for the skilled labor. But for companies that are dependent upon highly skilled labor, we're finding that there's been a tremendous disadvantage, because particularly in the IBEW, where you are sanctioned to have to pull people from that union workforce, and you're limited to that. So so I think that what we're seeing is that it's not as attractive as it once was, for business owners to become signatory contractors, because the labor force just isn't there. Although you do still get highly skilled labor when you do find workforce from there, the numbers just are not able to meet the demand, particularly with the infrastructure and the data centers and the AI and the EV infrastructure that is needed in the next 5 to 10 years. We're finding that there is going to be some type of leveling off of the demand that and the projections that are out there with what is actually able to be done, right? So there is that balance that we have to find. But yeah, in terms of construction and EV infrastructure, there are alternative paths, and technology and innovation is one of them.
Perfect. Hey, we are coming close to the top of the hour. So, and we do have a number of additional questions that we've received prior to the meeting. What I would like to do is just quickly go around and ask for examples. And Gavin, I'm going to start with you. Examples of the work that you've done that support the community. Each of you will come to audience questions, and then we'll come back to the questions that we've received previously and finalize those if we have the time. So, so Gavin, with regard to those examples, please share with us what you've done to integrate members of the IBEW, for example, into community projects relative to green energy infrastructure.
So we have an apprenticeship program within our company. The apprenticeship program is actually named after Ahmaud Arbery, who was an apprentice, an electrical apprentice. So we bring in younger people from the community, from rural and underserved communities, and bring them into our apprenticeship program. And along with that is when we also do projects in minority communities, underserved or rural communities, we hold events at those places, like a ribbon cutting ceremony, and we'll bring a dozen electric vehicles to those locations where the chargers are being installed or have been installed, and we'll bring a food truck and bouncy house and things like that, and we'll bring the community out there to educate them on EVs. We let them sit into the cars. Sometimes they drive around the block. We teach them about the cars. We teach them about the emissions and how they're protecting their environment and the future for their children. For many of them, it's the first time they've sat in an EV or even seen, what an EV looks like in person and touched one. So, so that's what we do for the community, and we involve our apprentices that come through that scholarship program very, very heavily. They're very heavily involved in those programs. I think you're on mute.
Am I up next?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going back. I'm seeing a lot of questions come in. So let's move to Al Curtis. Al, please share with us some of how you foster collaboration between the public sector stakeholders, suppliers, and community to achieve some of your clean energy goals.
Well, kind of piggybacking on Galvin, as far as what we've done, we partner with Chattahoochee Tech. We also have been working with Goodyear. I mean, not Goodyear, but Goodwill. Goodwill has a program with EVSC technicians where they train people trying to get back into the workforce on how to repair electric charging stations. So we've been working with them on putting that word out to municipalities, and also we've attended some of the graduations and brought some electric vehicle infrastructure providers there, and they recruited folks right on the spot. So we've been doing that, and also I'm on the board for Georgia Clean Cities, which we do a lot of outreach to the citizens and also to the municipalities on a lot of different programs that are out there that government and municipalities can participate in. So we're very active when it comes down to that. And also Cobb, this is our second year on doing a sustainability forum, which we invite the citizens in with different providers and different people that have green energy solutions to talk about those particular things in a nice big format. And we do also provide lunch for them as well.
Interesting. That's fantastic. Thank you. Dexter, please share with us some examples of how OpConnect has brought clean energy solutions to underserved communities, and share with us a little bit about what you feel the impact of those initiatives have had on the communities.
Yeah, there's a couple things I'd like to highlight. First of all, I mentioned that we're operating in a number of states across the U.S. And one of the things we've tried to do is every time we get a customer in a new region and we need to hire an electrical contractor to install the charging station, we try to be intentional and look for a minority-owned electrical contractor to work with. So that's going through National Minority Supplier Development Council, or looking at the state's business registry of minority businesses. And one of the things we try and do once we then, kind of get that minority-owned contractor in our fold is to educate them more about EV charging and to try and get them to actually bring more EV charging to some of their existing customers in their communities. Another thing that we're doing is we partnered with an organization called Forth, which is a nonprofit that is committed to bringing electric mobility nationwide. And Forth was able to win a $60 million grant proposal that we were written into with the Department of Energy. And what that proposal is doing is installing EV car share programs in low-income apartments in a number of cities, like we're in Charlotte, Detroit, just cities all over the countries. And It's been really interesting. The idea is that low-income people are always the last to get any new technology, and clean technology is no different. I'm from Chicago originally, and I tell the story that, you know, I go back home to my old neighborhood. There's not a single building in my neighborhood that has solar panels. Today, in the 2020s, no one has solar, and that technology is 40 years old. And the same thing was happening with EV charging. And the idea is to give folks a chance to, like Al said and Gavin said, actually have butts in the seat of these vehicles, to be able to use the cars. And just one thing that I heard when I was visiting one of the properties is there's an individual that is now driving Uber with that car share. So she's actually earning some income with that electric vehicle that she now has access to, you know, based on this program.
That's fantastic. Thank
That's
you so
awesome.
much for that. I'm going to divert to our audience because I have a lot of questions that are coming in. I'm going to start with, we have a number of people saying hello who represent different companies within the EV space. A lot of people with questions though. So I'm going to start. I'm going to hope I'm going to pronounce names correctly. Kate Tuitt. Is there any concern about the sheer amount of energy that AI requires and how that will impact the grid?
Yeah, you know, that's always a concern. And it's definitely at the forefront of you know, of the thoughts when thinking about AI, the large, massive data centers that have to be built to support it. You know, but the need and the demand is there. So, you know, it's just really a matter of balancing it out. You know, the consumer base, they have a desire and they have a need for things to be done faster and smarter, for processes to be automated. And a lot of that is going to take the technology that comes along with AI. But it is definitely a concern. And I think the majority of the major companies that are involved with the development of AI and data centers keep that in mind and are constantly thinking of ways to reduce the carbon footprint that it takes to develop the AI and the data centers.
That's a great response. Kwame, what is the biggest pain? So this comes from Kwame. What is the biggest pain point, time, effort, uncertainty that you experience once a client agrees to proceed with an installation? We're going to go to some really concise answers. Let's start with Dexter.
The
biggest
pain point, yeah, the biggest pain point we usually see is today is availability of the infrastructure. There's just so much EV charging and other electrical infrastructure going in right now. If you need a new transformer, for example, it may take 6 to 12 months just to be able to get that piece of equipment on order. So, you know, and if the customer hasn't planned for that, if they're looking to have this installed in the next 6 to 8 weeks, you know, you could have a problem there.
Interesting. Gavin, you seem to be agreeing with that.
Yeah. Supply chain is definitely a concern. You know, it's not able to meet the current demand. So when customers like Al and Dexter alluded to, sometimes a customer says they need 20 stations or 24 stations, and you know, most buildings are not built with that additional capacity to support that. So additional equipment is needed, and that does sometimes take time.
Interesting. Al Curtis, I'm sorry. What are your thoughts?
As far as the infrastructure piece?
As far as the pain points with regard to
pain points basically is
Mhm.
making sure that, again, like Gavin said, the power source is there. And also having adequate electricians within your organization that can offset the pain points of having outside entities to do it. And that's how we did quite a few of our first installations of electrification. We have on-site electricians that actually powered and wired these particular stations up.
Perfect. Okay, we are running overtime. I realize people have work that they've got to get back to. Some people have classes. Concisely, each of you, please tell me a little bit about, if we haven't covered it, what is the statement that you would like to make that people walk away from in this? Gavin, I'm going to start with you.
So the statement that I'd like to say is, each and every one of us is working towards developing the innovation and technology to make the transition to cleaner and greener energy a reality, one EV charger plug at a time.
Perfect. Dexter.
With the change in administration, it's pretty clear that electric vehicles are kind of, I mean, let's be frank, they're under attack right now. And so I think it's important for us to stay the course. Like Gavin said, he doesn't have a single customer that has made the transition to EV that is thinking about going back. This really is the future. The cat's out of the bag. There's no going back. Let's all stay the course.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Al Curtis.
Climate change is real. And if we want to make this a better world for the people that are coming behind us, we need to embrace all types of sustainable type energy uses.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So unfortunately, we really have run out of time. I just want to thank the panel. You guys are amazing. I've been following you guys for the longest, and the work that you're doing is just tremendous. So, and your background. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to the BFN staff. Thank you to the audience. I keep getting questions that are coming in. I just want you to know we're going to try and answer your questions even after this session. As we get those internal to the website, we'll try and push back some responses to you for that. So again, to our audience, I want to thank you. I appreciate you so much. I'd like you to please remain on the webinar meeting as we provide some closing information on how to get information going forward. And so again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for your time and engagement today. If you're passionate about these topics and issues, and you would like to be a part of our growing community dedicated to advancing solutions in this space, we invite you to join us. As a member, you'll gain access to exclusive resources, networking opportunities, and updates on new advancements. Again, please visit us at blackfleetnetwork.org to sign up and be a part of the change. We've covered some incredible insights today, and we are so excited about the path forward. Remember, the conversation doesn't have to end here. If you have any further questions or comments that you'd like to share with us after today's session, please do so by sending them to the email address located in the chat box. Together, we can drive innovation and action in clean energy. Let's continue to collaborate and share ideas as we build a brighter, cleaner future. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. We truly appreciate your interest and commitment to BFN's Clean Energy Task Force and topics. As you move forward with your day, please remember that we would love for you to continue to be a part of our discussions and efforts. Please have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at our next session.